Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara May, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I am your host, Dr. Lara May, and today I have with me Angela Clement. Is it Clement or Clement?
Yeah, Clement.
Clement. Okay. She is a former school principal, speaker, angel intuitive, writer, energy healer, and the creator and host of the Awaken Your Soul's Journey podcast and summit series on grief. She is also the author of her new book, Awakening Through Grief, and has co-authored the book Good to the Last Drop with Irene Weinberg. She's a certified grief coach. She helps people in one-on-one and group settings reconnect with their authentic selves after their loss. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a delight to connect with you and meet with you.
So tell us just a little bit about your story and your journey and why grief has become sort of your platform for which you help others through their journey as well.
Yeah, like so many people, I never expected that this was what I would be doing. But back in 2021, my husband was diagnosed with colon cancer and he passed away in October. And so it has been, well, it was such a shock to start out with. I mean, we were poised to retire. He had just sold the ranch where we lived. We were in a very small little community where we raised 2 kids, and our children had grown up, and we were ready to do all the retirement things, travel and just follow our grandkids and all that kind of stuff. And then when this diagnosis came, it was just a really big shock. It was like the rug had been pulled out from underneath of me, and we ended up in this process moving to get closer to a hospital, and also I retired from my position. So everything in my life had changed. And so I ended up, first of all, doing like everybody does, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do, just trying to figure it out on my own. And, people say that, grief will stay with you, but you'll get used to it and you'll learn to carry it. And all of those messages come through. And, a lot of the people that I talked to said that, they were still really sad. Some of them 20 years down the road. And the more I heard this message, the more I got worried about whether, this was my fate for the rest of my life. Was this how I was going to feel? This is how it was going to be? And so I really started searching kind of desperately for somebody who could tell me that there would be hope and that there would be inspiration and that there would be comfort and all of that. And so I ended up finding it very luckily. And then when I did, I realized a lot of doors started opening for me to meet more people who have transformed their lives through some really significant losses. And the more I interview people and talk to different people about their grief, I realized that, it's not a life sentence. It's tough. It's challenging. It's devastating. It's, so painful. And yet on the other side of it, I can see now gifts. I can see things that I would have never experienced in any way, shape, or form had I been living the life I was. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have continued that life. I enjoyed that life. And yet I am finding this, I will say, new life that I'm living now very fulfilling and very joyful. And so my mission is to help get that message out there that there is hope and there's a lot of resources. And so my mission is to share those with everybody.
I love too that you talk about it in the context of that it's not just something that you endure that you or that you like deal with. I mean, you do, but at the same time, more than that, it's a process that can lead to a lot of healing. And I don't think that's something that we ever expect at the beginning of that journey of grief, when we move through those 5 stages. And even when we come to that level of acceptance of that person or that soul, that presence is not physically with us anymore. Um, I think that's almost maybe when the healing begins. Like, what does that look like from your perspective, that whole concept of healing?
Yeah, well, for me, like you say, the process is really all about letting go and letting go of what was, because we can't change it. There's no way to change it. And that's what's the most painful part of all of this. And yet, um, there's there's hope and possibility for the future if we can start to see that. But the process takes time. It's not like, I can just say to you today, well, there'll be hope and you can just, go ahead and start building your new life. It's really,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
And it's not linear either.
no, it certainly isn't. But um, each step that you take in your healing journey gets you closer and closer to that fulfillment. And once you start taking those steps, and you can see some of the um, the benefit of it, and you can start to feel better, uh, that gets the momentum going in the right direction. So it just takes a little bit of support and a little bit of education about the grieving process and what it really is and what it is for you and your healing. And then, once you start moving in that direction, then things just get better. But it is difficult at the beginning. And I always preface everything that I say with that, because my heart goes out to people going through grief, because it
Mhm.
is not easy. It is very challenging and very difficult. And the rewards on the other side are equally as amazing. So it's just, it's like you say, it's a process, and we all go through it in some way, shape, or form in our lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the reasons I was excited to just have this conversation is because I lost my eldest dog in December, like 2 days before Christmas. And then
Mhm.
my best friend passed away like almost exactly a month to the day after that. And so just those two things. I mean, I say just, but those are like to me significant. And again, like it's not a spouse and it's not a child, but still, like you said, like it's different for everyone. And so um that it's very interesting. Again, those when I think when we traditionally learn of grief before we've been through it, they talk about the stages.
Mhm.
But then once you're in it, you're like, wait, what? It feels like a whirlwind. It feels like, to me also, it felt like every other thing in my life that maybe wasn't perfect got amplified
Yes.
and sort of like piled on. So, what advice or like what guidance do you have for people like when they're in that phase of it?
Hmm. Yeah, and before I speak to that, I really want to say, we say it's just a loss, when we lose a pet or something, and that's one of the things that I learned early on. I mean, at first I thought, oh my gosh, losing your spouse has got to be the worst thing in the world. Like it was so bad. But I also lost pets in that, and I realized, that pain can be just as devastating, and it depends on the relationship with the thing that you lost.
Mhm.
And it really losing a child is huge. I know that. But I haven't experienced it.
Right.
And
Me neither.
so,
So,
we can't ever really truly understand someone else's loss. And so I guess what I'm saying is try not to judge that, because everybody's is experience. So my advice really is that, first of all, you give yourself the grace to experience this and to experience it in your own way, because even though it's been outlined, these 5 stages, I know the work by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is really what we all kind of learned in school and growing up. That was all
right.
we really learned about grief, was these 5 stages. And really that whole um, research that she did was all about people who were terminally ill patients. And so they were dying. And so these were the stages that they went through in their death. So it wasn't really initially meant for people who were going through grief. It was, certainly grief for the person who is dying, but it's it's a very different process. And like you say, it's not linear. And so, when you get through the anger phase, you're not done.
Right.
You can go back, and maybe you don't experience, anger right away. I know for myself, I suppressed it for a very, very long time. In fact, uh, probably for at least 6 months to close to a year, I suppressed the anger. I just thought I wasn't angry. I just thought, no, I'm not feeling any anger. We, but everything comes up exactly when it's divinely meant to. And that's the beauty of this whole process, is that it's divinely created. It's a sacred process, and it's uniquely created for your healing. And so these emotions and things will come up exactly when they are supposed to, when you're ready for them. And so it's embracing that rather than pushing it away that helps with the healing. And
Mhm.
that's not easy. That, I needed support for that.
And I think because so many of us are so not used to feeling our emotions and allowing ourselves to really feel our emotions. And then when we're going through grief, it's so overwhelming that it's like we can't suppress them any, like they're coming out whether we like it or not.
Yes.
And so then we're like, what is this pain? And I think that's a lot, in a lot of ways, that's why we are so shocked by the pain, because we haven't really let her. And that might be like an evolutionary protection mechanism, maybe, I
Yes.
don't know. It could be also, a part of cultural conditioning, but it's interesting. And I love the fact that you brought up that distinction in her research, that it was originally for people going through the the um the death process themselves, not necessarily those of us that are left behind to grieve those that we lose. So I think that's a super important distinction. And I think it's helpful to also like sort of just shift that perspective just a little bit. Um, and again, yes, like giving ourselves the grace, not judging ourselves. I think that's the biggest, like, we're all our own worst, harshest critic. And I think, again, that is amplified even more when we're moving through something so emotional as grief. So, what are some processes or things that people can do to help themselves?
Well, there's a lot of exercises and things that are very simple, physical exercises that you can do to help to bring down your, nervous system when it's getting wound up and, unregulated. And so I use a lot of the work by Donna Eden. I share the daily energy routine because that was one of the things that really helped me. I would say that was at the top of my list through that whole experience, was just whenever I felt dysregulated, I would do that energy routine. And it's so simple and so easy and not long, you know. And I could do it multiple times a day. I could do it wherever I was. And so it became a really important part of my process. But I always tell people, there's a whole lot of exercises and resources in my book. But what happens to happen is that you have to find the one that fits for you, because not everybody um, gravitates to the same thing, just like we all have different, um, you know, gifts. We have different gifts, we have different interests, we're going to have different ways of healing. And so I ended up journaling. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of walks in nature. Some people exercise, some people dance, some people create art. There's all kinds of ways of expressing that emotion, but I think the important thing is to find a way that works for you. And
Mhm.
so, and to find a way to move that energy, because it really gets stuck in your body. We cower, and rightfully so, because it feels awful. And so we kind of pull ourselves in, and the energy stops flowing. And then all kinds of physical things start to happen as well. And so it's important to find ways to release that.
I mean, I love that you bring that up because I think it's a beautiful example and illustration of that link between the physical and the energetic. And again, so many of us forget, and or we're not taught, and or um, it's just not part of how we were raised to think about that energetic connection between our emotions, the physical body, and then of course our energetic being, and the fact that we are all energy. And so it's so interesting that grief can be such an awakening factor, such an awakener to so many different things, both internally and externally. And I think too, it's important to point out that, some people process by being more solitary and alone, like you said, like going out in nature, and others process better like within groups. And so there's support groups and or book clubs and or different things that you can or women's groups, things that you can find to create and find that community. Like you said earlier, like you through this work you found so many people that not only have been through something similar or some sort of grief, but that can also lend support, lend tools, and again, like enlightenment and awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. The process is so challenging. It makes you really look at yourself, and it really makes you examine all your beliefs, because you start to question everything. You question, where is my loved one? Why am I here? What am I doing on this earth? Why would this happen to me? There's all of those big questions, existential questions that maybe don't have an answer right now, but you're searching. And that's what I think ends up with people finding their own truth and finding out more about themselves and what they truly believe in and what they aspire to do, because otherwise you're just living your life, right? And
Right.
not to say that that wasn't a bad thing, but now I see so much more than I did before.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. I consider myself a person that's pretty connected with nature, connected with my inner being, connected with my spiritual practice. But you're right, through this process, like it really does make you start questioning and even looking either for that first time or again and deeper, what am I doing here? Life is so short. It can change in an instant. um it like in the physicalness of it, it can just stop. And but at the same time, like it goes on in some way, shape, or form. Like either your spirit, if the death is happening to you, and or your loved one, they're going on after you're not here. And so there's so many things to think about and examine. And
Yes.
um I love it. At the same time, I hate it.
Yes. Yeah, it is really a love-hate relationship, that's for sure.
And I never thought I could hate it because I've I love learning new things, but it is one of those, I think, earthly planetary dichotomies, that I think it's like part of our soul contract as being humans.
Yes,
Um,
for sure.
so,
And we are human, and that's the whole piece, right? So your spiritual, your soul and your spirit are probably singing because of the things that you're learning through this process. And yet the human part of you absolutely does not like this at all, and when I realized that there are those two aspects of myself and that I have to embrace both of them, I can't just, be this spiritual being going through the earth going, oh, well, it's okay. I'll be fine. I, I'm not, we're multidimensional. And so there's this human part of me that needs to be nurtured and acknowledged and comforted. And, I need support. And so once I started to realize that, I stopped, what did they say? Putting frosting on the poo is one of the expressions, you stop, poo-pooing all of this human aspect that you have, and you start to realize that no, you have to embrace all the parts of you, even the ones that feel, jealous or guilty or shameful or whatever they
mm.
are.
Yes. So we talked a little bit about, and we're sending people to your book in terms of like the exercises to figure out what's going to work for you, like rituals, writing, creating, solitary time, group time. But what about self-care? We haven't really talked about that yet, that piece of why. I mean, even if you're not going through grief, self-care is important, but it becomes even more important, I think. And it sounds like this is a big piece of your work too, when you're going through something that's so emotionally significant.
Yeah, I think that's, a big part of that being human piece is that, the human needs to be looked after. And there's a lot of aspects to this. Of course, there's a nutrition aspect, and there's, you need enough sleep and you need the exercise. And the big question it is all is how I do all of this because I feel so awful. I don't want to do any of it. Right. And so I encourage people to just, be patient with themselves, but to take some baby steps in those directions. I think somebody said to me, like if you can do 2% of that, you're building the momentum to get moving forward. So, to really embrace yourself and to just pick one aspect that you can and work on it a little bit. And you know what? Today, if I need to eat 5 cookies to get through, well, you know what? I'm going to forgive myself and we're moving on because, sometimes it's just like that. But yet, the small steps that we can take, walking in nature or doing things for ourselves, those are huge.
Well, and then just forgiving ourselves and moving on is huge too. That's a huge, I think, like self-care aspect that a lot of us struggle with. And so on, and other contexts as well. So that's I think that's definitely important, and again, probably a big challenge for a lot of people because again, like we're our biggest self-critics, right? We're our biggest, so we can be
Mhm.
so hard on ourselves.
Absolutely.
Um, And so I also want to bring up this concept of that grief lasts a lifetime. And I love how you just come right out and say, like, that's not comforting. Like that to me, and I agree with you, like that's not a helpful concept. So and it's very discouraging. So how can we shift and reframe that to help us be more gentle, move forward, instead of maybe feeling like this is just something we're going to be stuck with for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. If we understand grief as a process and a God given or sacred process that helps us move through this pain, then yeah, grief is here with us for sure because it was given to us at birth so that we could, take the loss of moving out of the womb or, losing our blankie or the bottle, or, all of these things that happen to us in life. So this process is here to help us move through that and heal through that. So that part I understand is here with us, but I'm looking at it as something that's helpful, not something that is negative. And then if we think about, the number of people that I have interviewed, and probably you too, who have gone through trauma, that have gone through grief and have come out on the other side and are living these joyful, fulfilling lives, there's so much that we can do, and we do not need to live in that pain. It's been proven over and over and over again. And I believe everyone can move through that. You might be saying to yourself, well, maybe that's good for them, but I'm not going to be able to. No, I truly believe everyone can. It's just a matter of time, because first of all, we all move through it at different, you know, speeds. That's not really the word I wanted, but it takes a different length of time for each person, right? And so we're not going to rush it, but at the same time, we know that there's light at the end of that, and that there's hope, and that there's, a way to live joy again. And so that is my big message. I don't want people to start thinking that, grief is with you for a lifetime and you'll just get used to it and this is the way you'll live. That's not exactly how it is.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's a choice. I mean,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
like how long are we going to choose? Because I'm of the belief and sort of the school of thought that our thoughts create our feelings
Yes.
create our actions and our results. So if that holds true, then this feeling that I'm feeling surrounding grief, whatever that is at the moment, can still be traced back to a thought. So what is the thought that I'm thinking about this that's holding me in this painful spot? And that is empowering because I can change that. I can choose to think something else. I can choose to shift it. I can choose to keep thinking it if I want, but I can also choose to move forward. And we can also work that problem backwards of if I'm tired of feeling sad or stuck or in the milieu of everything that grief is, what can I do to help shift myself out of it? And what in that perspective of thought work, go about it from that perspective also, I think.
Yeah, because we can get thinking that we're victims, right?
Mhm.
We can get thinking that all of this is happening to us. And it's hard to get to that space where we're believing, oh no, this is happening for us, it's happening for our healing. And it's really hard for people to hear that, especially in the beginning. But to start to realize that we have more control than we think. And like you say, changing your thoughts is huge, starting to listen to yourself and what your critical mind is saying to you, and how can we reframe that into something more positive and helpful.
Yeah, I mean, half of the stuff we think is not even true. So
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
it's just automatic nonsense that we're totally unaware of. And so even just becoming aware of what we're thinking can be so powerful. Again, in so many different contexts, but specifically this one, too, like you alluded to earlier, calming that nervous system, especially when you're in the spiral. Um, it can be really helpful as a tool to help you come out of that, or like to arrest the spiral, so to speak, and find a way back to the light, to something that's doesn't feel quite so hopeless and dark.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So how, and we talked a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into the energetic side of things. So what role for you did energy healing play? And is there a way that we can encourage people, or at least open people's thinking and thoughts to maybe exploring that more, integrating that more in this process?
Yeah. Well, it was huge for me, because we are all energy. And this whole concept of, energy flowing through our bodies, keeps us healthy. And the the emotions and the pain that grief creates will end up stopping that flow somewhere in our body, and often it happens in our lungs. You hear people saying, I can't breathe. I feel like I can't take a breath. Well, that's often where we pull in around that heart area. And so energy healing really helped me with some of the bigger, more powerful emotions that maybe I couldn't handle processing on my own. And having someone work with me energetically, they were able to lift those for me, do some of the heavy lifting so that I could breathe again, so that I could start to move again, and to walk me through that process. Because we aren't taught how to do this. We don't know how to move our energy. We don't understand it. And
Mhm.
so having different energy healers work with me was huge. And through that energy healing piece, a lot of those workers had abilities to bring messages from my loved one. And that was really comforting for me as
Mhm.
well. It just, you know, we talk about evidential mediums, making sure that we have that. Well, it was incredible, the messages that I got, so specific from the other side. And so that really helped me too, to really confirm my belief in the fact that life goes on after this one, and that my loved one is still there, and that he is supporting me, and I could feel that. And so that energy healing really opened up all of that for me. And so it was huge. It was a big part of my healing.
Yeah, I have to say that it's likewise for me moving through this journey that I've been on as well. I'm so grateful for the practices that I've been having, personally implementing myself and the teachings that I've had because I think it's helped a lot. But I think even if you are already a practitioner, I think it's important too to have another person to help hold space and because again like it can be dark and lonely and hard and painful, and so don't go at it alone. Like just because maybe you're already some sort of energy practitioner doesn't mean like don't reach out for help, and don't reach out. Please do, because I think that can be even more helpful and powerful, and remind us that we are, community beings, we're social beings, and that we're not meant to be alone. And it's sort of one of those ironic messages that comes through this, like you're losing or how you have lost someone in your tribe, but again it opens doors for you to either connect or reconnect.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I always think that, a coach needs a coach. A healer needs a healer. Like
Hmm.
we aren't meant to do this alone.
Right.
So you're so correct on that one. And as I was learning to do Reiki and all these other energy healing modalities, I was experimenting with all kinds of other ones with other people. And so all of it was part of my healing. And I think it expedites the process as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it helps keeping us moving forward, and like you said, like moving that energy so it doesn't get stuck.
Yeah.
Because even though sometimes, and we can take the days to like curl up in a ball and under the covers, and that doesn't mean we literally can't live our lives that way. That's not living. And so we are kinetic beings down to the cellular structure. We literally have to keep moving. So and
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's a real balance between that, even though I'm introverted by nature, and I felt like, I could do this in my bedroom with the door closed, I found out that no, there has to be a balance. You do need that connection with other people as much as I wanted to pull in. As soon as I reached out, I felt the support and I felt things ease for me. so much that now, I think I've found that I enjoy reaching out to people. I enjoy being part of a group now, where before I would have hesitated a lot more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I want to bring some attention to your summit. Is this a summit that you do annually or periodically, or is it something you did once and have replays of? How does that work and how can people find it?
Yeah, so I did 4 summits
Okay.
altogether, and if people want to purchase those, they are for sale. They just need to contact me, and I will hook them up with them. Each of them has about 25 to 27 speakers, and so they were a big part of my work early on. And then
Mhm.
last year, I started the podcast. So when I started that, I kind of let go of the summits. Not to say that I've kind of got it in the back of my mind that maybe I should do another one, but for now, I'm just focusing on the podcast.
Yeah. And I'm actually really interested in reaching out to you about those summits personally, but just for people out there that aren't familiar with summits, if that's possible, because I feel like they've been around for so long and so many different subject matters, but usually they're a huge value for what you get, like you said, 25 to 27 speakers. And I mean, where else are you going to find such a concentration of expertise in one subject matter? It's actually pretty hard unless you're going to conferences in person. And so I think it's a great way to consume educational material about a certain subject. So I would really encourage people to definitely reach out if you're looking for a variety of perspectives, a variety of teachers, or you're just, again, sometimes like I am, like you just want to be that sponge for a certain subject matter. Summits are a great, great way to do that. So and then is there a website or an email that people would reach out to you about that?
Yeah, so my website is healingenergy.world, and everything is on there. So my
Okay.
books are on there, the podcast is on there. I have a support group that I run about every 10 days on Zoom, and everyone is welcome to that. It's been running for over 2 years now, and I have a fantastic core group of people in there that are so knowledgeable and have a lot of resources. And I keep notes at those meetings. And so I post them online as well. So you can go through and see all these tried and true resources that we've been sharing and what we've been discussing for the last 2 years. And then I have my own one-on-one healing sessions, angel readings, my group program. And so, yeah, and I have a one-on-one program that I do at like a 12-week program as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's lots there to look at. And
Okay.
so, yeah, just
Beautiful.
world. Yeah.
Healingenergy.world. I love it. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on or anything do you want to bring forward before we wrap up?
No, I just want to really thank you for taking the time to connect with me today. And I I just want your listeners to know that, if you're feeling tough, it's okay. There's better days to come ahead, and to just
Mhm.
go ahead and take that step and start searching for what can help you.
Yes, knowing that you're not alone. So there's always
Absolutely.
resources too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and all of the work that you're doing. Definitely, everybody check out healingenergy.world to find whatever that piece is that resonates with you. And that's going to be that missing puzzle piece for your journey at the moment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.